about you as a keynote speaker for Ecocity's World Summit.
Thank you.
And I am glad to note that you have plans to come to India also, Chennai.
I do. I just got my e-visa today. So yes, very happy about that.
Okay. So I understand you are one of the keynote speaker for the Ecocity World Summit, and would like to know what is your theme, specialization, area of specialization.
Well, my work is related to reframing the city, rethinking the city as a living system.
Yes.
So integral city is what I have called my work for the last 20 years. And I was invited to come to the Ecocity World Summit and speak about cities as Gaia's reflective organs.
Oh.
So I got that phrase from James Lovelock. And James Lovelock, of course, is the author of the Gaia hypothesis that the Earth itself is a living system. So that's what I will speak about.
But the term integral city, it's I should say it is a new name or new thing like eco-cities, like smart cities. So how did you draw to this work? What motivated you to think of this integral city? I went through some of the literature, so I could find out what exactly you wanted. But what motivated you to?
What drew me to it? Well, I was studying human systems. That's been my career. So I worked at developing individuals, then developing leaders, then developing teams and organizations and communities. And so then I was suggested to look at the city. And of course, the city has all of those human systems in it. And instead of looking at the built city, I'm looking at the city through the lenses of human systems. And the integral model was something that was coming on the scene at the same time as I was trying to rethink cities. So one person who's very responsible for that movement is Ken Wilbur, and he uses a perspective of individual and collective perspectives, as well as inner and outer perspectives. And when we put those together, we have a nice framework that's in a quadrant system. Another place that I found inspiration was through the work of Spiral Dynamics Integral, which is actually looking at the evolutionary developmental aspects of human systems. So when I put them together, I'm able to see the inner and the outer, the collective and the individual, and to be able to see that systems are complex, they're adaptive, and they evolve. And so that's how I'm looking at the city as a whole.
So now that you are working on integral cities, so how do you connect eco-city and integral city? Or what do you think? What's the difference? Or
okay, it's a good question because I was inspired by two of the principal keynote speakers there that have been part of this whole summit series for a long time. And that was William Rees, who published the Eco Footprint, which you're probably familiar with. And also Richard Register, who was the person who first wrote the book about eco-cities. So from the Eco Footprint, I learned about all of the kinds of data and systems that we can actually see through what I would call the right-hand quadrants of the integral model. I can see the behaviors of people. I can see how we measure the data. I can see the systems and infrastructures. And what Richard Register added was, how do we see the city in the context of the ecoregion or the bioregion? How can we understand that cities are always within that kind of a context and influenced by them? And I thought, well, these are very powerful frameworks. And what both those people exclaimed to me was frustrating for them was, how do we bring people into the picture? And that seems to have been the remit that I took up and brought in the consciousness of people and the cultures of people. So I like to add the consciousness and culture to the behaviors and the systems and the ecoregions.
So you feel the people participation, public participation is a must for the proper functioning of the not only cities, whatever it is, public participation play a major role.
Absolutely. I really don't see how it's possible to have either short or long-term impact in the city without involving the people that are impacted by it, and that they should actually be contributing to it as it's evolving, instead of somebody coming along and then saying, okay, here's a project, we're going to build it, and then we expect people to just move into it. I think we need to bring people in right at the very beginning and help them co-create the projects.
Can you briefly tell me what is going to be the content of your presentation? From whatever you explained, what exactly? Just a brief about the content.
Sure. Well, I have the very interesting experience of having lived in the Vancouver area up until about 2 years ago. And then at that time, I moved to Findhorn, Scotland. Findhorn, Scotland happens to be the land of my ancestors. And usually it is the other way around, that Scots have immigrated to Canada. So I am bringing a message that the learning I've had from moving from one of the world's most livable cities, which Vancouver is considered to be, to the UK's longest standing eco-village, which is Findhorn, Scotland. So what have I learned going from the evolutionary changes that show up in a eco-city like Vancouver to an eco-village that has had to involve itself in the eco-region and had to really build from scratch on some very foundational principles, and then bringing that back to Vancouver. I think one of the people you might be familiar with, because he came both from Scotland and did a lot of work in India, is Patrick Geddes. Have you come across Geddes in your architectural discourse? And so Geddes was the person who actually said to think global and act local. So that's going to be part of the theme of what I share.
So what is the message you want to give to the people who are coming there through your presentation? What message you would like to give?
A couple of messages. One is that I think that, as I mentioned, people must contribute to the development and evolution of their city. And I think it's because there is something that I have recognized as a master code of care. We must care for ourselves, so we care for each other, and together we can care for our places, and all together then we can care for the planet. So there's 4 levels of care, and they're not immaterial because they actually create lenses for making decisions. And it's really the first time in history that we've been able to see that it's really necessary for us to look after each other and our places in order to serve the planet, to be able to support the planet in its own life. So that would be one message. And because of that message, I would even take the Geddes epithet of think globally and act locally and borrow something I've learned from another colleague, Jude Couravan, is to actually think cosmically, to actually bring in the consciousness of the universe, and to feel globally, be aware that we have a living system that supports us, and to act locally with both of those frames in mind. So this is where the care connects to a very big understanding of how the living system of the earth sits within a conscious universe.
So if you see, from smart cities, we have come to eco-cities. Maybe we are leading to integral cities, which you are taking initiative. So if we think about eco-cities, it's getting, the awareness is not much. It is not much people are aware of it. If you take India, I don't think many people are aware. It is getting, the message is getting spread. So what do you think to advance the eco-cities? What is that one can do, or what is that one should do to advance this concept of eco-cities and make it more popularized? What is that you feel?
Well, Ecocities has worked a long time. So almost, I would say my interaction with them has been over 20 years. And one of my backgrounds, one of my own qualifications is as an accountant. So when I first started to think about the scale of the city, I was looking for indicators and how do you measure well-being and what are the kinds of ways that you can think about the city that give us feedback, that tell us that we're doing things well. Because if you take the point I made earlier that every city has a context of the eco or the bioregion in which it sits. And if the ecoregion is not healthy, then the city is not healthy. And so when I looked at the well-being indicators, this is where the integral model came in and allowed me to think about the metrics of the qualitative place caring on the left-hand side of the quadrants and the quantitative placemaking on the right-hand quadrants. And I think that Ecocity has done a really good job at putting together a set of indicators that help us to move along that way. I'm also going to do a workshop with Sean Esbjorn Hargens, who has created a whole set of indicators that completely align with this integral city. He calls it the wisdom economy indicators. There's 10 capitals. So one of the ways that people can come and learn is how to use the Ecocity indicators to bring these perspectives of the four different ways that people are involved in them through the individual and the collective and the inner and the outer perspectives, but also to find out how they can impact the city by making good choices around indicators. I believe less is more. You don't need to have 1,000 indicators. You need to have the indicators that show people where's the energy and how are we serving the well-being of all these different scales, particularly the ecoregions. So I think that I'm having the opportunity to have a really good integration of my work with the Ecocity work that started 20 years ago. And it's nice to bring sort of our divergence back together into a convergence, I would say.
So I'm happy that you are able to give an idea about eco-cities from your perspective. What do you think? So do you have anything else to tell in mind, to convey any other message or anything else to tell?
Well, I was just speaking with a city who contacted me from Europe who said that we've been working on a very technical sort of smart city program. It sounded wonderful. It relates to something called the third revolution. But, you know, the problem they were having was none of the people were cooperating. So I would like to bring in what I call the four voices to that discussion, and I will bring that out also at the conference. The citizens themselves, as I've mentioned, the civic managers who operate the city, business innovators, and the third sector. I think the third sector or the civil society has a huge role to play in the city. And I also believe that we are impacted by our spiritual lives and our consciousness. And I really hope that I can bring that out with a sense of grace and a little bit of fun.
As you said in your write-up, living intelligence. That is people should participate more. You have mentioned in your website, I could see what is that you meant by integral city. One point is living intelligence. So people should be more smarter and more involvement is required. That's what I think you are planning.
And the living intelligence includes multiple generations. So in our cities, we have at least 5 generations, I would say, living with each other now. And the indigenous community says we must make good decisions unto the 7th generation. So we're almost there yet. And I think that we have to become aware of the wisdom that we can learn from indigenous communities and bring that into the city too.
Yes, good. So nice talking to you. Maybe welcome to India, welcome to Chennai. Chennai is one of the smart cities identified by Government of India. Some works are going on. So if you come to Chennai, I can also take you and show you what are the type of work that is happening in Chennai.
I would love that, and I'm going to tell you. I'll send you my travel plans, so maybe we can connect with that after the Ecocity conference. I'll be in Chennai in November.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. See you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.